quick correction up top that many of you in the crypto space let us know about immediately after the episode dropped. We talked about SBF getting 25 years, and that broke right as we started the show. And we discussed that the customers of FTX were going to get made whole. There's been a lot of speculation about them being made whole. However, there was an important note. FTX depositors are getting paid back in US dollars, not their crypto. That dollar amount, we've learned, is based on the price of their tokens at the bankruptcy date. The bankruptcy date was November 11th in 2022. Super important because the report that started the run on FTX was published November 2nd. There's a couple of days in between those two dates, and a bunch of crypto plummeted. Solana dropped 50% between November 5th and November 11th. That's just one example. But since then, Solana's been up 11x and Bitcoin's up 4x. Ethereum doubled. So if you're one of these depositors, you missed that run up. And so FTX customers were rightfully furious. I'll pause there before I get into more details. Any thoughts on this, Sachs?
Yeah, I mean, just to hit the nail on the head here, if you had left your Solana at FTX, you're going to get $16 per token back. And that apparently was the price at the time that they went under. So according to the judicial proceedings, you've been quote unquote made whole. But the truth is that Solana at this moment is trading at $188. So you have not been made whole. And this is why the crypto community is furious. And so that basically is the correction. Now, I thought it was interesting that the judge played into this notion. And we talked about that quote from the judge last week, where he said that if you go to Vegas, abscond with your customers' money, gamble it, and then pay them off with the winnings, then you've still committed a crime. He seemed to be conceding this idea that the investors or the depositors at FTX have been made whole. Clearly, they have not been, but his quote kind of lent credence to that. And the reason the judge was talking about it is because SBF's lawyers were clearly making this argument that his sentence should be commuted or reduced because the depositors had been made whole. And I think what you saw in the media coverage is that the reporters were buying into this idea of depositors being made whole. I mean, you guys got this from somewhere, right? I mean, this is what the media coverage. So the media was doing what it's been doing throughout the FTX case, which is carrying water for SBF. And I believe that this narrative that they're trying to concoct, which we now know is completely false, is designed to serve a purpose. And I think that purpose is to get SBF either pardoned or have his sentence commuted, because Mr. Bankman and Ms. Fried are huge Democratic Party bundlers. And I think the goal here is to create the idea in the public's mind that people weren't really hurt by this. This was just sort of youthful indiscretion or hijinks. And, you know, it was a bunch of hijinks, right?
Shenanigans.
And no one was shenanigans where no one was really hurt. And if they can create that impression in the public's mind, they can now set up getting one of their Democratic Party connections to help push for a commutation of the sentence. I think there's a narrative going on. I think there's an agenda behind the narrative, and it's what I'm saying here.
Yeah, this pardon power is really powerful. Chamath, any thoughts here on the bankruptcy judge making that call to sell the shares? Because obviously, if crypto had tanked since that time, it would look like he saved the money by selling them, clearing the positions, and giving them cash. What is the right thing for the bankruptcy judge to do here? Keep the equities, i.e. the tokens, or to sell it and freeze it in time? It seems like a very difficult call.
Hold on, Jacob, we got to correct that for just in a certain way. So the trustee has been selling the tokens post run-up. The point is that he's selling tokens at current prices, call it 188, and then using that to pay off depositors at $16. So the only reason the depositors have been, quote unquote, made whole is because they're getting the benefit of this run-up. But they're not paying them back at the price of their Solana today. They're paying them at this price that got fixed at the time of the bankruptcy. So the truth is, this is why no one's getting made whole.
Yeah, this is the really hard thing to track here, because we couldn't find when they were selling it or how much they've been selling. This seems to be being done in the shadows or in the background. And so if anybody out there, as we crowdsource what's going on here, wants to keep us up to date, let us know. But yeah, these tokens, some number of them got sold at a low price. Some of them are getting sold, I guess, as time goes on Chamath, your just thoughts on how to do this properly? What's the proper hygiene here? I mean, we're not bankruptcy experts.
No, that's a great question. I don't know the differences between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 bankruptcy law, but I don't know what was filed here. Was it Chapter 7 or Chapter 11? I don't know. But it seems that this was the only thing that they could do, which was to liquidate into a common, unit of measure, because at the end of the day, their auditors had to measure in a standard unit, and that was probably the US dollar. And so then they were trying to work backwards from that shareholder equity number to get them back to that number. So it was kind of logical that this was the only thing they could do. And I guess they benefited from the fact that there was a run-up, but it's really unfortunate for folks. So I don't know, maybe in other countries, had this been a differently constituted company organized in a different place, bankruptcy law could have allowed the liquidator to actually just distribute the assets on a pro rata basis.
This was a Chapter 11,
I don't think that would have helped that much.
Hold up. I got the update here. This is a Chapter 11, and in September, the judge allowed FTX to start liquidating up to $100 million a week
in Delaware,
USD. Right?
This is a Chapter 11 Delaware filing.
Yeah, Chapter 11 in Delaware, correct. And this could increase to $200 million a week. So it seems like they did start the liquidation later, so they might have caught some of the run-up. So if they did catch the run-up, then you could be doubly upset, right?
No, my point is in different situations, one could imagine where the shareholders could have been allowed to vote. Do you want money or do you want in kind? And if in kind, maybe you get a pro rata distribution of all the assets, which would have included a whole bunch of these coins, but then it probably would have included a bunch of other assets, not just Solana and Bitcoin and ETH that ripped. So
I think the point is that if they had distributed in kind, meaning tokens, that people would have seen, oh, wait, I only got back 1/10 the number of tokens that I put in. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
You put in 100 Solana tokens, you only get back, call it roughly 10. Because the price of those tokens was fixed at 16, and they can now sell at somewhere between 100 and 200, they're able to, quote, make you whole at the $16 price, but that's not being made whole. That was
and
the
what
point
are they
of all
doing with the extra money sacks? Because are they using that to make other people in this whole crater whole as well? So maybe they're thinking holistically, they're taking the profits of those Solana holders, let's say, or Bitcoin holders went 4X. And is that going to trickle down to the equity holders? Who knows? Freeberg, you have thoughts here?
Yeah, I think the plan is that excess capital beyond what is, quote, owed to the account holders goes to the equity holders because it's considered excess of the liabilities. Therefore, it goes to the shareholders. I'll also say in a traditional brokerage, you create an account. And when you set up an account, your account has a currency denomination. It's a dollar-based account or a euro-based account. And then your account holds a bunch of assets. And so at any given time, the value of your account is represented to you in that local currency. The challenge with crypto exchanges is that there's often this representation of a wallet, which is meant to hold assets that don't necessarily have the intention of being translated into a locally denominated currency. And so I think that's what makes the system different. In the case of a US exchange bankruptcy, and this happens in commodity trading accounts or commodity exchanges often, there's a freezing of the assets and then a liquidation of the assets, where the freezing of the assets sets the price or the value at the moment of what you're supposed to hold in that account in your currency of your account.
Right.
And so the bankruptcy judge and the trustee are treating this like a liquidation process using a local currency that was set at the time, whereas many folks don't consider that the intention of the account, that the account was meant to hold assets, that it's really a portfolio of assets that shouldn't be liquidated to try and generate local currency, because that's kind of the whole point of many of these crypto currencies themselves.
It was a custodial account, basically.
Right. A custodial account of assets versus a trading account which is meant to ultimately be converted back into a local currency, which is typical. And I think that's what makes this such a challenging process.
Yeah, just liquidate everything. Pool of money arrives, distribute the money. But
based on that.
The way bankruptcy works is that there's a pecking order. That essentially you have all the assets of the company. The job of the trustee is to liquidate them. They have a fiduciary duty to get the highest price they can for those assets. We have no reason to believe that they haven't. They seem to have waited a decent enough amount of time to benefit from this crypto recovery. And then what happens is, again, there's like a pecking order for the distribution of the proceeds. And you're going to have debt holders. They're going to be senior to the equity holders. The depositors are going to be high up there as well. Government agencies that are owed fines are going to be high up there. There's going to be a very specific pecking order in which the equity holders are last.
If we want to go into conspiracy corner and put our tinfoil hats on, you mentioned the IRS, the CFTC, right? These government agencies are owed like over $20 billion. If all this crypto profits, if they're higher in the stack, they would be going directly to the government, and the government is handling the process here. So it doesn't look
right. But I don't think it's that's driving it. I think bankruptcy rules are very specific, and they're completely designed around, again, assessing what the value of each claimant is at the time of bankruptcy, and then creating a pecking order for distribution. So I don't think there's any foul play here. I think that this is just the way that the cookie crumbles. But I think that it's simply wrong or misleading to say that the depositors were made whole. And I think the reason we thought that is because of these statements that were promulgated through the media, including the judge, to give people that impression. And I think it really just underscores that the media always has an agenda. And you got to be so careful about imbibing their narratives, because without knowing exactly what their agenda is, you can imbibe their bias.
Yeah. My understanding of bankruptcy is like they can get a little bit creative, and the bankruptcy judges can be a little creative in trying to holistically think about what's the best thing for the business and all the stakeholders, shareholders. But anyway, we'll keep monitoring it. And like we've said before, anytime we make a mistake, we're going to talk about it right up front. Anytime there's an omission or breaking news happens, we're going to fill you in.